Now we will see the Bohr's model of hydrogen atom. Model of hydrogen atom. Previously, Rutherford's theory proved the nucleus charge is positive, and he said protons are placed inside the nucleus and the dimensions of the nucleus also he found. Before him, one small concept of electron was discovered by J.J. Thomson, but there are some failures and limitations are there. So there are some limitations and failures, and Mr. Rutherford, he couldn't predict what is actually happening. So because of that, one more theorem was developed to modify the Rutherford's postulates. That was given by Mr. Niels Bohr, and his model is said to be Bohr's model of hydrogen atom. So what are the limitations of Rutherford? Why the concept of Bohr's model was erased? We will see now. Actually, in the Rutherford's model, nucleus contains positive charge. So electrons are stable around the nucleus, and this structure is similar to the solar system. These are all the views and expressions of the Rutherford about his atomic structure model. Solar system. In solar system, gravitational force is the key to hold the solar system stable. Where the sun is at the center, all the planets are revolving around the sun in their own orbits or one of their focus. In solar system, gravitational force is the reason to hold or to stabilize the solar system. But which forces are the reason to stabilize the atomic structure? The concept is going like this. Positive charge and negative charge, automatically there is a Coulombic force of attraction between these two charges when they are separated by a distance. But if electron is revolving around the nucleus in their own orbits like this, in circular orbits, if the electron is revolving, it will get a centripetal acceleration. Because centripetal force is the reason to keep the electron in the limits of the orbit. If there is no such a force, electron will come out of the path. We know that. So centripetal force or centripetal acceleration plays a key role to keep the electron in the limits of the orbit. But we know that any orbit, any object or any electron which is revolving in a path continuously, it will radiate energy. Means this electron, while it is revolving continuously around the nucleus, there will be a loss of energy for this electron. Whenever there is a loss of energy, this electron will take the spiral path like this and completely merge with the nucleus, and this causes to destruction of atom. Complete destruction. That means if this is proved, if this prediction is right, then what we can understand? No atomic structure, there is no single atomic structure which is stable. All should destruct because of the spiral path of the electron towards the nucleus, because of the loss of energy while they are revolving around the nucleus. So one more thing, whenever these electrons in the spiral path, when they are approaching the nucleus, there is a possibility for the change in angular velocity, angular frequency, This means these two will change because in spiral path this electron is approaching the nucleus. This is very, very important. When it is approaching the nucleus, its energy will increase and its angular velocity will increase because it is under the influence of positive charge. Its angular frequency will increase. Therefore, frequency of the radiation emitted by the electron will increase or will change. Frequency of radiation. This also changes. So these three are related to each other. Automatically these three will change. That means this electron which is revolving in the spiral path should give a continuous spectrum. Means continuous spectrum. What is the meaning of continuous spectrum? The order of the wavelength should be continued. There should be no gap. But what type of spectrum we actually got, or Mr. Niels Bohr observed? Line spectrum. By gathering all the information, he came to conclusion that classical theories or classical electromagnetic theories are not sufficient to explain the concept of atomic structure. That's why Mr. Niels Bohr in 1912, after visiting the Rutherford's laboratory frequently, he added some more points. On those points, he took from classical quantum theory, which was newly developed at those times. So he adopted some points to his own atomic structure, nothing but the Bohr's model of hydrogen atom, and those points he added to his own theory. Those are said to be Bohr's postulates. See, if one theorem is failed, one postulate is failed, there is an alternative. So like that, J.J. Thomson failed in some aspect. Next, Rutherford proposed some theories based on his alpha scattering experiment, and Rutherford is not able to explain all these things what we have discussed now. That's why Bohr assumed some predictions by taking the inspiration of the quantum theory. Now, what are those postulates and how they are valid, and what are the limitations, and what are the explanations of the other scientists to the Bohr's model, we are going to see. Now we are going to see the Bohr's postulates. Bohr's postulates. There are three important postulates according to the Bohr's model. We will see one by one and its explanation. First one. In Rutherford's model, electrons are revolving around the nucleus, right? Such like that. What is the Bohr's first postulate with respect to the motion of electrons? Electrons will revolve around the nucleus, and each electron will exist in a specified states around the nucleus. And each of that specified state has their own energy. That is the first postulate. And one more thing, the second postulate is like this. Electrons are revolving around the nucleus, right? So the electrons will revolve around nucleus in their own orbits, and the angular momentum of those orbits should be quantized, and that quantization factor is h by 2 pi. Third one, electron may take transition from one energy level to the non-radiant another energy level. In this case, the electron may emit the photon. The energy of the photon which is emitted is equal to energy difference between initial and final states. The postulates are states like this. Electron exists around the nucleus in a particular stable states. These are called stable states of atom also. These stable states have their own energy. Each stable state has their own energy. This is the simplified form of the first postulate. What is the second postulate? Electron will revolve around the nucleus in the orbits or steady states where the quantum, where the energy of where the angular momentum of those orbits should be quantized. That means electrons will revolve or we can write revolves because it is continuous, right? Revolves around the nucleus in orbits for which the angular momentum is quantized and the quantization factor is h by 2 pi. Angular momentum is quantized and quantization factor is nh by 2 pi, where n is equal to 1, 2, 3, so on. This h by 2 pi is the quantization factor, where n refers to the state, means energy state, first energy state, second energy state, such like that. And third postulate, electron can excite or de-excite, can jump from one atomic energy level to the another non-radiant energy state. In this case, they will emit a photon and the energy of the photon is equal to difference between the final and initial energy states. So it is like this. Electrons transition takes place from one energy level to the another non-radiant energy level. So in this transition, photon may be released. In this transition, photons will be released. And the energy of this photon, which is released due to the transition of electrons from one energy state to the another energy state, is equal to the energy difference between initial and final states. So the frequency of photon emitted is equal to h nu is equal to EF minus EI, where h is equal to Planck's constant, nu is equal to frequency, EF final energy of the final energy state, EI energy of the initial energy state. These three are the postulates of the Bohr's atomic model. Now we are going to see the equation part. With this Bohr's postulates, we can find out the velocity of the nth electron in an orbit, radius of the orbit, energy of the orbit. These are all set with Bohr's orbit, Bohr's radius. Now we are going to find out that. Now we'll find out the Bohr's radius and all these things. So we know that angular momentum is L, its expression is mvr. According to the second Bohr's postulate, this angular momentum is quantized and that is nh by 2 pi. So this expression will be written like this: mn vn rn is equal to nh by 2 pi. So mvr, mn means mass of the nth, velocity of the nth electron and radius of the nth orbit is equal to nh by 2 pi. Now we are going to find out the equations for the remaining things. It will be like this. What is Vn? Velocity of the nth electron. Means velocity of an electron in the nth orbit. So what is the equation? E by under root 4 pi epsilon naught Rn. But from this equation we can substitute Rn is equal to nh by 2 pi mn Vn. So Vn is equal to nh by 2 pi mn Rn. By substituting, let us write this one as equation 1, this is equation 2, and we will get Vn is equal to 1 by n into E square by 4 pi epsilon naught into 1 by h by 2 pi. So it will become nh by 2 pi into E. So therefore, E square by 4 pi epsilon naught into 1 by n into 1 by h by 2 pi. This is Vn. And I am substituting this Vn in this equation, and with equating with the nh by 2 pi, we will get an equation for the Rn also, means radius of the nth orbit. So the equation will be like this. So the Rn is equal to radius of the nth orbit is equal to what we will get, n square by m into h by 2 pi whole square into 4 pi epsilon naught by E square. Now we will see the cancellations. N square by m into h square by 4 pi square into 4 pi epsilon naught by E square. 4 and 4 get cancelled, pi square get cancelled. So therefore, radius of the nth orbit is equal to n square h square epsilon naught by pi m E square. This is radius of the nth orbit. From this expression we can find out radius of the Bohr's orbit. See, h is equal to Planck's constant. What is the value of h? 6.25 into 10 to the power of minus 34 joule seconds. Epsilon naught, we have 8.85 into 10 to the power of minus 12. Coulomb square, volt per meter. Pi, 3.14. M, mass of the electron. E, charge of the electron. By substituting all the things, we will get an equation like this. Rn is equal to n square into 6.625 into 10 to the power of minus 34 into 8.85 into 10 to the power of minus 12 by, it is n square h square, right? That's why whole square. Pi 3.14 into mass 9.1 into 10 to the power of minus 31 kg into charge of electron 1.6 into 10 to the power of minus 19 whole square. By substituting all the things, we are going to get one equation. It will be like this. By doing all the calculations, we will get 5.29 into 10 to the power of minus 11 meters, or we can simplify it 0.53 angstroms. But what is the equation of Rn n square h square epsilon naught by pi m e square? Here, if n is equal to 1, R1 is equal to h square epsilon naught by pi m e square, and its value is this much. This R1 is equal to h square epsilon naught by pi m e square is called Bohr's radius. That means if n value goes on increasing, radius is going to increase. If radius is going to increase, angular momentum also going to increase. That is a very, very important one. That means Rn is proportional to n square, and this h square by epsilon naught into pi m e square value is 0.53 angstroms, or approximately 5.29 into 10 to the power of minus 11 meters. Suppose if anyone wants to find out the R2, radius of the second orbit, 2 square into 0.53 angstroms. That's it. R3, 3 square into 0.53 angstroms. So it is a simplified form, or one more thing, it's a quantization form to find out the Bohr's radius. Next we are going to find out the energy of the nth orbit, and from that we can applicable to the Bohr's energy also. Now we are going to see the energy of the nth orbit. The expression for energy is minus e square by 8 pi epsilon naught Rn. And we have the Rn equation previously, and we are going to substitute that Rn value in this equation. Therefore, En is equal to minus e square by 8 pi epsilon naught into what is the Rn value, n square by m into such like that, and here it is going to be reciprocal, right? So that's why I am substituting the reciprocal value. Minus e square by 8 pi epsilon naught, it is already there, into m by n square into 2 pi by h whole square into e square by 4 pi epsilon naught. This whole is actually Rn, and 1 by Rn means reciprocal. So the equation will changes like this: minus e square by 8 pi epsilon naught into m by n square into 2 pi whole square means 4 pi square by h square into e square by 4 pi epsilon naught. What are the calculations? 4 pi, 4 and 4 get cancelled, pi square get cancelled, and e square into e square, e power 4 m. So En is equal to minus m e power 4 by 8 pi epsilon naught n square h square into epsilon naught. That's for 8 pi epsilon naught square epsilon naught into epsilon naught square into n square h square. Here also this pi and pi get cancelled. Therefore, En is equal to minus m e power 4 by 8 epsilon naught square n square h square. This is the equation for energy of nth orbit, and this energy of nth orbit consists mass of electron, charge of electron, epsilon naught, number of the orbital, Planck's constant. By substituting all these things, we are going to get one value, and what is that value, how it will change, we are going to find out now. See, therefore En, by substituting all the values, we will get 2.18 into 10 to the minus 2.18 into 10 to the power of minus 18 joules by n square. This value we got by substituting m value, e value, epsilon naught square, h square, and En is inversely proportional to the n square. So it is a negative gradient, that's why we will get minus 2.18 into 10 to the power of minus 18 joules by n square. But what we can understand, 1 EV is equal to 1.6 into 10 to the power of minus 19 joules. 1 joule is equal to 1 by 1.6 into 10 to the power of minus 19 EV. So in place of joules, I am substituting these values, this conversion, and finally we will get minus 13.6 by n square EV. This is the quantized form or empirical form of the energy of the nth orbit with respect to the Bohr's atomic model. In place of n, if you substitute n is equal to 1, we will get minus 13.6 eV. N is equal to 2, another value. N is equal to 3, another value. Now we are going to see the energy differences and ionization potential with respect to this equation. Now we will see the energy levels and its differences. See the equation, En is equal to minus 13.6 by n square EV. Suppose if n is equal to 1, E1 is equal to minus 13.6 by 1 square EV, it is equal to minus 13.6 EV. What is this n is equal to 1? Closest orbital to the nucleus, means first orbital. So, if you want to remove an electron from the first orbit or an orbit which is close to the nucleus, we should apply this amount of energy. Otherwise, it is very difficult to remove an electron from that orbit. So, that's why this value is called ionization potential. So, the minimum amount of energy required to remove one electron from the first orbit. The another name for the first orbit is ground state. From the first orbit, nothing but the ground state is equal to minus 13.6 eV, and this is called ionization potential. Called ionization potential. Now we will see the energy values from one more level to the another more levels, and what will be the minimum energy difference between those energy levels we are going to see now. This is the concept of ionization potential. Now we will see the energy differences between the energy levels. We got E1 is equal to minus 13.6 EV, where V should be capital. What about E2? Minus 13.6 by 2 square EV. It will be minus 3.4 EV. Listen, ground state energy is this much. First excited state or second energy level is this much. What should be the energy difference and what is the need of this energy difference? We are going to see now. Energy difference is equal to E2 minus E1. E2 is minus 3.4 EV minus of E1 is minus 13.6 EV. If we calculate these things, we will get plus 10.2 eV. What is the meaning of this? The energy differences between the ground state to the first excited state are E1 to the E2 is plus 10.2 eV. That means if you want to excite or de-excite an electron from its ground state, excite means ground state to first excited state, de-excite means first excited state E2 to E1. Means if you want to excite or de-excite an electron from its ground states to the first excited state or vice versa, we should supply this much amount of energy. That's why this is equal to the energy difference. And we will go to see the E2 to E3. We got E2 is equal to minus 3.4 eV. What about E3? Minus 13.6 by 3 square eV. The answer is minus 1.51 eV. So if you want to excite an electron from E1 to E3, it will be like this. E3 minus E1 minus 1.51 eV minus of minus 10 point, E1 is minus 13.6. If you do the calculation, we will get, so E3 energy is minus 1.51 eV minus of E1 energy is minus 13.6 eV. The difference you will get is plus 12.09 eV. What is the meaning of this one? If you want to excite or de-excite an electron from ground state to the second excited state or E1 to E3, or de-excite means E3 to E1, we should supply 12.09 eV of energy, means 12.09 electron volts of energy. Whenever an electron de-excites or jumps from E3 to E1, this much energy it will be released. This energy will be in form of radiation. Now we will see one problem which relates to the radius of the nth orbit and its quantum numbers. A 10 kg satellite circles Earth once every 2 hours in an orbit having a radius of 8,000 kilometers. Assuming that Bohr's angular momentum postulate applies to satellites just as it does to an electron in the hydrogen atom. Find the quantum number of orbit of the satellite. Means in an hydrogen atom, how the electrons are revolving around the nucleus, such like that one satellite is revolving around the Earth and its time period is 2 hours of radius 8,000 kilometers. So we are assuming the same concept of Bohr's second postulate of angular momentum. So with respect to that information which is given in the problem, we should find out the quantum number of the orbit of the satellite. What is the Bohr's second postulate? The solution is like this. M Vn Rn is equal to Nh by 2 pi, where n is equal to number of the quantum or quantum number of the satellite. M is equal to 10 kg. Radius is equal to 8,000 kilometers. So we can write 8 into 10 to the power of 6 meters. Time period is equal to 2 hours. Please convert into seconds. 7,200 seconds. We are going to apply all these values to find out the number of the, find the quantum number of the orbit of the satellite. How to find out the quantum number of the orbit of the satellite? Its symbol is n. N is equal to quantum number. Therefore, quantum number n is equal to 2 pi Rn whole square into m by time into Planck's constant. By substituting all the values, we are going to get the value like this. It is 4 pi Rn square into m by t into h. 4 into 3.14 into what is R? 8 into 10 to the power of 6 meters whole square, mass 10 kg. time 2 hours means 7200 seconds. H Planck's constant 6.625 into 10 to the power of minus 34. After substituting all the values, we will get n is equal to 5.3 into 10 to the power of 45. We said that n is equal to quantum number, but we got the quantum number in the order of 10 to the power of 45, which is extremely large. Extremely large. So, this prediction is based on classical electromagnetic theories. Quantum means it won't allow this much large variations. Quantum is simply a microscopic value it will allow. So, it is under the classical assumption. These values are under classical assumptions. That's like we can see one problem. Now we are going to see the line spectra of the hydrogen atom. We know that electron excites or de-excites from one energy level to the another energy level. Such like that there is a energy difference also when it is excited or de-excited. So we know the equation H nu is equal to Ef minus Ei. Let us say this equation is in the terms of initial and final levels. H nu If is equal to Enf minus Eni. Now, E is equal to h nu, but actually for the nth energy level we got the equation of energy, that is equal to me power 4 by 8 epsilon naught square h square into n square. Now we are equating this whole equation to that one, and the answer will be like this. H nu is equal to me power 4 by 8 epsilon naught square h square n square, but h nu If is equal to me power 4 by 8 epsilon naught square h square into 1 by nf square minus 1 by ni square. So we got to the energy differences between the two levels. That's why we have it like this. Now nu If frequency is equal to me power 4 by 8 epsilon naught square h square. This h will come here, it will become h cube into 1 by nf square minus 1 by ni square. So go back to the relationship between the Rydberg constant to the frequency. Therefore, what is a Rydberg constant? This one into this one divided by c. Therefore, me power 4 by 8 epsilon naught square h cube c. This is Rydberg constant because we got the equation nu is equal to rc into 1 by nf square minus 1 by ni square. So we are equating this one as rc, where r is equal to me power 4 by 8 epsilon naught square h cube into c. Substituting the m value, mass of electron, E, charge of electron, epsilon naught square 8.85 into 10 to the power of minus 12, h cube, Planck constant, c, speed of light, we will get the equation Rydberg constant 1.03 into 10 to the power of 7 meter inverse. According to the Balmer series, the empirical mass formula is, so Rydberg constant R is equal to 1.097 into 10 to the power of 7 meter inverse. So for the hydrogen spectra, this is the Rydberg constant based on the different empirical formulas of Balmer series, Lyman series, Paschen series, bracket, Pfund series. we got the R value like this. Classically means mostly these two values are similar in the order. So this much similarity is enough to prove the quantum things with the classical expressions. So therefore what we can understand, this was proven. There is no such a difference between the empirical formula value of the Rydberg constant to the experimental values. So this is proved. And we have two different types of spectra: emission spectra and absorption spectra. What is emission spectra? When electrons are passing through the different electric fields. Okay, it absorbs the means it excites from one level to the another level. It emits the photon, because if electrons are passing through the electric fields, this electric fields causes to disturb the electrons already. So it causes to emit the photon. That's why one light spectrum will be formed, and that line spectrum is called emission spectrum. But when an electron absorbs this photon, that electron needs the same amount of energy to de-excite itself in the reverse order. That's why the spectrum which is causes to the de-excitation is called absorption spectra. So this is emission spectra and this is absorption spectra. Now we are going to see one problem based on these Rydberg constant values. Now we will see one problem which is related to the Rydberg formula and the calculated wavelengths. Using the Rydberg formula, calculate the wavelengths of the first 4 spectral lines in the Lyman series of the hydrogen spectrum. So sometimes in problems it is very difficult to remember the formula, but we will see now. Rydberg formula, calculate the wavelengths. We know that E is equal to hc by lambda, but this E is equal to me power 4 by 8 epsilon naught square h square into 1 by nf square minus 1 by ni square. But this one is 13.6 eV. Therefore, me power 4 by 8 epsilon naught square h square is equal to minus 13.6 eV. If you do the same calculation in terms of joules, you will get 2.18 into 10 to the power of minus 18 joules. Now this value we got this much. NF, Ni. There are 4 Lyman series: 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1. So 1 is the final destination. So we are going to find out now. Wavelength we should find out. So hc by lambda is equal to this much. Lambda is equal to hc by whole of this thing. Therefore, we can write it as lambda if also. Okay, or I1. I means the initial point. 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, like that. So therefore, lambda I1 is equal to hc by me power 4 8 epsilon naught square h square. How much it is? This much. 2.18 into 10 to the power of minus 8 into 1 by nf square minus 1 by ni square. So you please substitute in place of I, please substitute 2. So here it is 1, here it is 2. So it will be like this: hc by 2.18 into 10 to the power of minus 18 into 1 by 1 square minus 1 by ni square, where h is equal to Planck's constant, c is equal to speed of light. Therefore lambda I1 is equal to 6.625 into 10 to the power of minus 34 into c means 3 into 10 to the power of 8 meters per second by 2.18 into 10 to the power of minus 18 joules into 1 minus 1 by Ni square. This is the common formula. So I is equal to 2, you will get one value. I is equal to 3, you will get another value. I is equal to 4, we will get another value. I is equal to 5, we will get another value. Now we are going to see the values one by one. Now we are going to find out the corresponding wavelengths. If I is equal to 2, the transition is taken from 2 to 1. That means the first Lyman wavelength it is. So if I is equal to 2, so if I substitute 1 by 2 square and calculating all the values, we will get 12,018 angstroms. This is from wavelength from 2 to 1 transition. If it is 3 to 1 transition, the value will be 1028 angstroms. 3 to 1. If it is 4 to 1, the value is 974.3 angstroms. If it is 5 to 1, 951.4 angstroms. So these are the first 4 Lyman series transitions. 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1. These are the corresponding wavelengths of the Lyman first 4 spectral lines. Now we will see the de Broglie's explanation for the quantization of the angular momentum, which is a second postulate of Bohr's model. De Broglie's explanation. About quantization of angular momentum. Now we will see this. What is the quantization of angular momentum? L is equal to mvr is equal to nh by 2 pi. Means the angular momentum is quantized with a factor of h by 2 pi, integral multiples of h by 2 pi. Why it is taking the integral multiples of h by 2 pi? This is very important one. But this was actually proposed by the Bohr. The explanation, the correct explanation for this proposal was given by de Broglie after the 10 years of this discovery. So his explanation is like this. So this is the de Broglie's explanation. Yes, this is the nucleus. Around the nucleus in orbits, electrons will revolve. Each electron acts like a point wave source. That means if electron is revolving like this, it radiates the energy, and that energy will travel like a wave along the orbit. And it will be reflected back like this. So, wave, which is the energy which is released by the revolving electron, is like a wave along the circumference of the circular orbit. And one more point we should note in this case is wavelengths will be calculated. Only those wavelengths can be survived which has nodes and antinodes. Remaining all wavelengths will be cancelled out and suddenly drops to 0. So electron which is revolving around the nucleus in their own circular orbits will act like a source of the wave, point wave. Wavelengths will be calculated as a combination of nodes and antinodes. If these are not existed, those wavelengths will be suddenly drops to 0. What is the symbol of the wavelength? Lambda. So if you see this, the wave distance of the wave travelled by a wave along the circumference of the circle. That is nothing but the wavelength. Wavelength is nothing but the distance travelled by a wave without losing its energy. So we can write lambda is equal to circumference of the circle. N lambda is equal to, we can write 2 pi Rn. V is equal to h nu, where nu is equal to c by lambda, and we know that lambda is equal to h by mv. Therefore, equating this, h by mv into n is equal to 2 pi Rn, and we can write nh by mvn is equal to 2 pi Rn. I am bringing this 2 pi here and mn will go there. Therefore, nh by 2 pi is equal to m vn Rn. So this is the correct explanation of the quantization of the angular momentum within the integral multiples of h by 2 pi. This explanation was given by de Broglie. Though that's like this is proved. Having these many applications and finding these many energies from one transition level to the another transition level, still Bohr's model has some limitations. Now we are going to see those limitations and we are concluding this lesson. The limitations of Bohr's predictions are like this. Limitations of Bohr's atomic model. First limitation. Bohr's atomic model and Bohr's predictions are suitable for hydrogenic atoms, means single electron systems. It is valid only for hydrogenic atoms or single electron systems. The theories which are later proposed by the Bohr's, after Bohr's, they tried to implement the same predictions to the multi-electron systems, like 2-electron system like hydrogen, helium, 3-electron systems like lithium, like that. But no success they tasted. Not even a single success, single thing is success. So single experiment was success. So what we can understand is, it is restricted to the hydrogenic atoms or single electron systems. The researches they have done to prove the Bohr's postulates are valid for all the elements for second levels, helium, lithium, oxygen, all are proved wrong. What is the reason behind this? That means electron is having two influences in the atomic structure. It is influenced by the positively charged nucleus, and one more, if in an orbit, if two electrons existed, not only with the force of attraction, there is a force of repulsion also takes place in the orbit, because of the same charged electrons are constricted or restricted in an orbital. That means what we can understand is electron is influenced by nucleus which is positively charged. So this point they took as a consideration, means this point they noted, but they forgot to note the force of repulsions within the electrons in an orbit. They didn't calculate the force of repulsion between electrons in the orbit. That means if you take the helium atom, its atomic number is 2. If its atomic number is 2, in the first orbit only 2 electrons will exist. Those 2 electrons will be attracted by the positive nucleus, we know that, but Coulombic's force of attraction, repulsion and centripetal force all are gathered together to give the stabilization to the atomic structure. But what will happen to the force of repulsion between the electrons which lies in the first orbit? No one calculated. Maybe that is the reason for the unsuccessful of Bohr's atomic model for the multi-electron systems. That is the one reason. And one more, this Bohr's atomic model, exactly they find the frequencies of the radiations. Frequencies of the different radiations, maybe in the atomic spectra, absorption spectra or emission spectra. But they didn't explain, and they failed to explain why the radical changes are occurred in the intensities of the spectrum. Being in the line spectrum or band spectrum, some lines are visible with high intensity, some are weak. What is the reason? We don't know. So this is one of the point where we should stress the Bohr's atomic model. Means this model explains, or this model explained the frequencies of radiation but failed to explain the variation of intensities of the spectrum. Variation means some field lines are strong in intensity, some field lines are weak in intensity. So these are the limitations of Bohr's atomic model. So how to eliminate these limitations? Because not only the science was not stopped after finding the hydrogen or helium, it was extended up to 118 elements. So we should understand all the elements' atomic structure. So how we can predict the remaining things? So these are said to be complex atoms, and these complex atoms are analyzed by a radical theory that is called quantum theory. So this quantum theory explained the multi-level or complex electron systems very well by taking some quantum exemptions. With this point, I'm concluding this lesson.